Here is something that will stay with you. Hawaii gets 10 million tourists a year. They come for the beaches, the sunsets, the mai tais. They photograph the same places, stay in the same hotels, leave with the same memories. And almost every single one of them drives past structures that have been standing for 1,000 years without ever stopping to ask what they are. There are walls in Hawaii built with such precision that modern engineers cannot explain the tolerances. There are fields of 23,000 carved symbols whose meaning has never been decoded. There is a stone so heavy, 7,000 pounds, that ancient prophecy said only the man destined to rule all of Hawaii could lift it. Someone did. The tourism industry sells you the surface of Hawaii. Underneath it is something far older, far stranger, and almost completely unexamined. These are 10 ancient structures in Hawaii that no one can fully explain. Hawaii is the most isolated, populated landmass on Earth. It sits 2,500 miles from the nearest continent, built entirely from volcanic eruptions rising out of the deepest ocean on the planet. The people who first settled these islands did not arrive by accident. They crossed open ocean without instruments, navigating by stars, by wave patterns, by the behavior of birds. They were among the most sophisticated maritime cultures in human history. And when they arrived, they built. What they left behind is not well understood. Not fully, not honestly. The structures on this list were constructed before Western contact, before written records, sometimes before the current form of Hawaiian civilization itself. Some were built by people whose identity is still debated. Some were built according to methods no one has replicated. Some stand today in the middle of resort corridors while tourists eat breakfast 50 feet away and never look up. Here are 10 of them. On the northern tip of the Big Island, in a field of dry lava rock swept by constant wind, sits one of the oldest temples in all of Hawaii. Mo'okini Heiau was built around 480 AD. That is not a guess. The Mo'okini family, who have served as its hereditary guardians for 15 centuries, have maintained an unbroken oral record of its construction. 1,500 years of a single family protecting a single site. The structure is roughly the size of a football field, 267 by 135 feet, built from water-worn lava stones that do not exist naturally at this location. Every stone was carried here. According to tradition, this was accomplished in a single night. 18,000 men formed a human chain stretching 14 miles to the Pu'uhonau Valley and passed stones hand to hand from darkness until dawn. By morning, the heiau stood. Modern analysis has never produced a satisfying explanation for how this was physically possible in a single night. The volume of stone, the distance, the coordination required, the numbers do not work cleanly. But the heiau stands. The stones came from somewhere. They did not move themselves. The flat sacrificial stone at its center is still there. It has been there for 1,500 years. Mo'okini Kahuna Nui Leamomi, Mo'okini Lum opened the site to the public in 1978, ending 15 centuries of restriction. Before that, most Hawaiians had never seen it. Whatever happened here in 480 AD, it was considered important enough to guard for 1,500 years. That kind of continuity does not happen by accident. In front of the Hilo Public Library, sitting on a patch of grass between the parking lot and the front entrance, is a boulder that weighs approximately 7,000 pounds. It has been there for centuries. It used to sit in front of a temple dedicated to the goddess Pinau. Ancient Hawaiian prophecy stated that any man who could move the Naha Stone would have the strength and spiritual authority to unite all the Hawaiian islands under a single ruler. No one moved it for generations. Kamehameha I, the man who would eventually conquer and unify the Hawaiian archipelago, allegedly lifted and overturned the stone as a teenager. He then spent the next several decades doing exactly what the prophecy said he would. He unified Hawaii by force, diplomacy, and military genius. He became the only person in Hawaiian history to rule all major islands. The prophecy, whatever its origins, described him with remarkable accuracy. There is no scientific explanation for how a teenager lifted 7,000 pounds. Either the story was constructed after the fact to legitimize Kamehameha's rule, or there is something about the Naha Stone and its history we do not understand. Neither explanation is fully satisfying. The stone sits in front of a public library today. You can touch it. Most people who walk past it have no idea what it is. Inside Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, on a hardened field of ancient lava, there are 23,000 individual carvings. This is the largest petroglyph field in the entire Pacific. They were etched into the rock over centuries by people we cannot fully identify, using tools that left marks we have not decoded. Human figures. Geometric shapes. Circles. Lines. Sail-like forms. Fathers carried their newborns here and pressed the piko, the umbilical cord, into small circular holes carved into the rock as offerings for long life. Some of those depressions still contain fragments of umbilical cords left centuries ago. But most of the 23,000 carvings are not birth records. Most of them remain completely uninterpreted. Archaeologists have categories for them, but categories are not meaning. We have named the shapes. We do not know what they say. 23,000 individual acts of carving. 23,000 messages or prayers or records or something else entirely left in a lava field that is still actively expanding from eruptions happening today. The carvers and the volcano were here at the same time. The lava kept coming. They kept carving. We do not know why. In a pineapple field in central Oahu, surrounded by agricultural land, sit 44 stones arranged in a specific formation that has never been fully explained. Kukaniloko was built in the 12th century. For 500 years, it served as the royal birthing site for the Hawaiian chiefly class. When a chiefess of sufficient rank was about to give birth, she came here. 36 ali'i witnesses were required to be present. Specific chants were performed. The stones themselves were believed to amplify the mana, the spiritual power of a child born at this location. Chiefs born at Kukaniloko carried a level of sacred authority that chiefs born elsewhere simply did not have. The location conferred legitimacy that nothing else could replicate. The stones are carved with petroglyphs, whose ritual meaning is still debated. The precise geometry of the arrangement, which stones were positioned where and why, is not fully documented. Oral traditions regarding the complete ceremonial function were not recorded before much of that knowledge was lost. What we know is the outline. The interior of the ritual, what specifically happened here, what the stones were believed to do, exists only in fragments. The site sits in the middle of a working agricultural landscape. There is a small parking area. Most people drive past it on the way to somewhere else. Hawaiian fish ponds are engineering. That is the only word for them. Beginning roughly 600 to 900 years ago, Hawaiians constructed enclosed ocean inlets using stone walls built from lava rock walls stretching thousands of feet, enclosing tens of acres of ocean, designed to trap and cultivate fish at a scale that fed entire populations. Heiau Fishpond on the windward coast of Oahu has walls 5,000 feet long, enclosing 88 acres of ocean water. The walls have gates makaha, engineered with specific gap sizes that allow juvenile fish to enter, but prevent adult fish from escaping. The fish grow to maturity inside the enclosed water and are harvested from within. This is aquaculture. Systematic, scaled, deliberately engineered aquaculture practiced centuries before the concept existed in Western understanding. The engineering problem is significant. The walls had to withstand constant wave action, tidal pressure, and storms while maintaining structural integrity across thousands of feet of coastline. They were built without modern surveying, without concrete, without power equipment. At peak operation, the Hawaiian Fishpond system fed hundreds of thousands of people. At Heiau, the walls are still there. A nonprofit has been restoring the fish pond since 2001. Fish are being raised in it again. The original engineering still functions. Nobody has fully explained how the wall tolerances were calculated without instruments. The walls simply exist, and they work. The Wailua River Valley on Kauai's east coast contains one of the most sacred concentrations of sites in all of Hawaii. 7 Heiau, a royal birthplace, a bellstone. The bellstone Pohaku Hu Kiha sits near the river. When struck in the correct location with the correct instrument, it produces a resonant tone that tradition says could be heard for miles, announcing the birth of a royal child to the entire district. The acoustic physics of this are real. Specific rocks, struck correctly, do produce tones audible at significant distances. What is not explained is how the specific stone was identified, how the striking location was determined, and how a sound traveled miles without any amplification. The entire Wailua complex was allegedly built by the Menehune, described in Hawaiian tradition as small, extraordinarily skilled craftsmen who built massive structures overnight and then vanished. Mainstream archaeology treats the Menehune as mythological, possibly a folk memory of an earlier wave of Polynesian settlers who were later absorbed or displaced. But here is what is true. Some of the most precisely engineered ancient Hawaiian structures have no clear construction record. We know they were built. We do not have a clear account of who built them or how. The Menehune stories exist because something built these things, and the people who came after did not have a better explanation. Pi'ilani Heiau is the largest heiau in Hawaii. It is not close. The platform stands 50 feet high. The footprint covers roughly 2 football fields. It was constructed from lava boulders, some weighing several tons, stacked without mortar in tiers that have stood for centuries. The walls at the base are 8 to 10 feet thick. It was built in its current form by the Maui chief Pi'ilani in the 14th century, though it was likely expanded from an even older structure. The construction question is basic and unanswered. How were multi-ton lava boulders moved and stacked to a height of 50 feet without mechanical equipment? Archaeologists have proposed wooden sledges, human chains, earthen ramps built and removed during construction. None has been definitively proven. No construction records exist. The oral traditions that might have described the methods were not systematically recorded. The structure simply stands larger than anything else of its kind in Hawaii, made of stones that should have been immovable by any method available to its builders. You can walk along the base of the wall today. The scale does not fully register until you are standing next to it. On the Kohala coast of the Big Island, steps from some of the most expensive resort properties in Hawaii, there is a 223-acre lava field containing 3,000 ancient carvings, human figures, animals, deity symbols, carved by people who lived here before Western contact, before the resort corridor existed, before the concept of a coastline defined by luxury hotels was imaginable. Most guests at the adjacent resorts never know the petroglyphs exist. There is a path. It is not prominently marked. The resorts were built around the carvings, not over them, but the cultural weight of what sits at the edge of the pool deck is not part of the amenity package. Many of the Puako carvings remain completely undeciphered. The figures have been cataloged. Their meaning has not been recovered. The knowledge of what specific symbols meant, what stories they recorded, what prayers or instructions they encoded, that knowledge was not written down. When the people who understood the carvings were gone, the meaning went with them. 3,000 messages, left in stone, that no one alive can read. If you broke a kapu law in ancient Hawaii, and kapu governed nearly everything, from what you could eat to where you could walk, the punishment was death. No trial, no appeal, execution. There was one alternative. If you could reach Pu'uhonua O Honaunau before you were caught, a priest could perform a ceremony of absolution. You were then free to leave. The killing stopped. The slate was cleared. Getting there was the problem. You had to outrun the people hunting you, cross open ocean in some cases, and reach the place of refuge before they reached you. The Great Wall that defines the site is 1,000 feet long, 10 feet high, and 17 feet thick at its base. It was built from lava rock with no mortar, fitted stone by stone to tolerances that have held for centuries without significant failure. The precision is what engineers have difficulty accounting for. Dry stone construction at this scale, built to withstand a coastal environment indefinitely, the knowledge required to plan and execute that wall, exceeds what we typically attribute to the tools available at the time. The wall outlasted the entire civilization that built it. Today, it is a national historical park. The wall still stands. The absolution ceremonies no longer occur. The kapu system that made this place necessary was abolished in 1819, but the wall remains. Menehune Fishpond sits in the Heiau Valley on Kauai, a nearly perfect crescent of stone wall curving across a river inlet, enclosing a 39-acre pond. The engineering is precise. The curve is geometrically consistent. The walls have stood for approximately 900 years. Tradition says the Menehune built it in a single night. They formed a double line stretching for miles, passing stones hand to hand from the mountains to the valley. They worked from dusk to dawn. By morning, the fish pond was complete. Modern engineers who have studied the walls note that the curve of the enclosure suggests either precise geometric measurement or an intuitive mastery of geometry that left no record of how it was acquired. The wall has no foundation in the Western sense. It sits on the riverbed. It has not moved significantly in 9 centuries. And then there is this detail. Local tradition says 2 people, a brother and sister, watched the Menehune work from a hillside. They were warned not to make a sound until the work was complete. They spoke before dawn. The Menehune stopped. The pond was left with a gap in the wall that is still visible today. The gap is real. It is there. Whether it was left by mythological craftsmen interrupted by a human voice, or by ancient builders for a reason, we have not determined. No one has answered that question. The gap in the wall has been there for 900 years. It has never been explained. 10 structures, spanning 15 centuries. Across 6 islands, a heiau built in a single night by 18,000 men. A stone that a future king lifted to prove he was destined to rule. 23,000 carvings that no living person can fully read. A wall whose engineering tolerances remain genuinely uncertain. A fish pond with a gap that has been there for 900 years because two people spoke before dawn. The tourism industry is not hiding these places. Most of them are publicly accessible. What we do, all of us, is fail to slow down enough to register what we are looking at. Hawaii is not a backdrop. The land under the resort pools and the rental car roads and the airport runways is the same land where people built things we cannot fully explain, worshipped in ways we only partially understand, and left behind messages in stone we have not yet learned to read. The question worth sitting with is not what the ancient Hawaiians could not do. They clearly could do things we are still trying to account for. The better question is what we are not paying attention to. What is sitting in plain sight on a lava field next to a public library, or in a pineapple field in central Oahu that we are still driving past without stopping? If you have visited any of these sites, or if you know of something that should have been on this list, tell me in the comments. The surface of Hawaii is what they sell you. What is underneath it is still being uncovered.